So I thought I was done making videos on Assassin's Creed because, frankly, I just don't really care anymore. The game came out, it did objectively flop regardless of what they want to spin, and that's really all there is to it, right? Well, no, not so much, because the cope from Ubisoft, I've never seen copes to this peak before, at least not from a gaming company. So welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle, and yeah, Ubisoft says don't compare Assassin's Creed Shadow's success to Valhalla. The latter launched in COVID's perfect storm, and feedbacks on platforms less affected by review bombing is stellar. The game is performing to the levels that are poor enough for them to say, hey, quit comparing this to the last one. There's a bunch of factors, which, to be fair, there were, but I feel like those factors are not big enough factors to outweigh this frankly historic flop. So we're getting into this. Before we do, hit that subscribe button. I'm a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news nearly every day, and yeah, let's be honest, the second biggest launch in AC history is still a very big launch. No, not necessarily. Here's what these individuals don't seem to believe, or more importantly, what they are neglecting to tell you, because they actually do know this, but as long as they don't actually show you the data, show you the receipts, they can try and build this fantasy that isn't real. They can obfuscate certain things. It doesn't matter if you have the second best launch. If the money wasn't there and if the budget was so high, like this game's reported budget is between 250 and 350 million, and that is, you know, before all the marketing. That's just the production budget. Until we get sales figures, it doesn't matter if it's the second highest launch if the sales figures aren't enough to make the game make a profit. If I release 2 products and one makes $100 and then I make the sequel product and it makes $2, hey, that's still the second biggest launch for the product, because I've only released the 2 products, inherently it's going to be. But if I release, let's say, 5 products, and one makes $100, and then one makes, $50, then one makes $60, but then one makes $30, but then one makes, $70. Again, alright, that fifth one that made $70 is the second highest. That's still a far cry from the one that made $100. Now, if it cost me $100 to make the item, and I sold it $100 the first time, great, you broke even. Cost me to make 100, or if it costs 150 for the subsequent ones, then they only sell 50, 60, 70. Yeah, it's losing money. Like that's what they're not telling you here. And again, they know this. They're not dumb. At least I can't imagine they're dumb. But they are manipulative. So let's actually go through this article. Assassin's Creed Shadows is doing very well, incredibly well. They really, really want you to believe this. You wouldn't believe how well it's doing. Whoa. Assassin's Creed Shadows is doing very well, incredibly well. You wouldn't believe how well it's doing. If you need to tell us that 3 times in a row to try and use the psychological trick of telling somebody something over and over for them to believe it, if you have to do that in your first sentence, I think it is fair to believe the game is probably not actually doing that well. It's not doing quite as well as AC Valhalla did back in November 2020. Shadows is the second biggest launch in the series' long history. Not the first. But per an internal Ubisoft email sent by IGN, the company's telling employees it's not exactly an apples-to-apples comparison to compare Shadows and Valhalla. So what? IGN is literally being told not to make this comparison. So these games journalists, the people that are writing these articles, that we're supposed to trust and believe, obviously we don't, they're games journalists, but we're supposed to trust them as the arbiter of actual journalism, as this is the information for the players, are being told what to say by Ubisoft. Even if they're not being outright told what to say, they're being given very clear hints. Valhalla launched under extraordinary conditions, says Ubi's internal comms, smack dab in the middle of widespread lockdowns and brand new console hardware. Now here's the dealio. How often, how long does the let's use COVID as the excuse stage plan on going on? Because Hollywood only recently stopped doing this. Apparently gaming is still doing it. I don't know, did comics ever stop doing it? I mean, comics were dying even before COVID, but whatever excuse you need, am I right? So yes, widespread lockdowns, we all know, games sold extraordinarily well during the lockdown, specifically digitally, because people weren't allowed to leave their homes. We get how it works. Like, yes, it is fair to say that COVID lockdowns did help games sell. That being said, they didn't stop selling well after COVID lockdowns ended. Split Fiction just came out and got millions of players. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 sold 2 million. That's a AA game that's a sequel to a game that the vast majority of people didn't play. It got 2 million copies sold, well over 2 million copies sold. And Baldur's Gate 3 was a game, once in a generation style game. It broke the bank. I guarantee you most people didn't play Baldur's Gate 1 or 2, and frankly, even the Divinity Original Sin games are pretty AA and maybe even indie compared to, the Baldur's Gate brand, which was the games worked on by that team previously. So, needless to say, there's been a whole lot of games as of late that have sold extraordinarily well. I don't think you could really use COVID as an excuse anymore. I mean, let's see. I don't know. Did Resident Evil 4 Remake outsell Resident Evil 8? I'm going to take a wild guess and say it did. I don't actually know, but I'm going to take a wild guess, say it did. And if it did, and you guys can fact check me in the comments, guess what? Resident Evil 4 Remake came out well after the COVID stuff, well after Resident Evil 8. Because I don't know how much Resident Evil 8 sold. I know that Resident Evil 4 sold about 10 million copies. And so if that be the case, why didn't Resident Evil 8 get the boost from COVID that Resident Evil 4 didn't get afterwards? Like, again, this is a complete asinine argument. And then they say, and brand new console hardware. Alright, brand new console hardware. It is very true that you launch something with brand new console hardware. Yes, your launch games, they're going to peak, they're going to spike. Why? That's all you really have on the console. That being said, one, people couldn't get their hands on these consoles half the times because A, you can't just get those, digitally like you can the games once you have the console, and people weren't allowed to go outside. So that puts a hole in your COVID argument. But even if you could, there was widespread shortages of, let's say, PlayStation 5, for example, because of a lack of chips because of the COVID stuff. So the vast majority of folk didn't actually have these consoles to begin with. And then you add to that, we're talking about, the massive increase in players that play on PC now. Steam is the biggest it's ever been. Frankly, the player count for Steam actually dwarfs the player count for PlayStation, Xbox. I've done a video on that in the past. So yeah, with all these players that are now playing on Steam for the first time, even if you did have lower console sales because it's not new console hardware, you should see that being made up for in terms of Steam purchases, and it's not. How do we know it's not? Because as these numbers go, and again, these are just the Steam numbers, there are 27,000 people playing right now. I'm recording this at 10 o'clock p.m. on a Tuesday night. You will see it about 11 a.m. tomorrow when you're watching this. 27,000 people playing at 10 o'clock p.m. Central Time, a 40,000 24-hour peak, and the all-time peak has not moved in what will be 4 days for you guys, Saturday, Sunday, something along those lines. So yes, bingo, bango, bongo, there it is. This is cope. This is a magnanimous cope, if I'm being honest, because they're out here telling these games journalists, don't make these comparisons for these factors. They're outright lying about the factors. They don't want the comparisons being made because it will go to show that Assassin's Creed is a declining brand. It's a brand that nobody cares about anymore. And why? Mainly because Ubisoft is attached to the helm. Ubisoft is a declining company. They're a declining brand, because I good goddamn guarantee you that if somebody else did buy this out, be it Tencent or Bethesda or Capcom or insert any third-party company here that still has goodwill with their fans, and they made an Assassin's Creed game, I bet you would do fucking gangbusters, or it would at least do better than Assassin's Creed Shadows is doing. The former of those two things kind of sucked for you and me, but they were great for an entertainment business. It was a perfect storm we may never see again, says Ubisoft. So what does that mean for how the company is thinking about Shadows? It's more meaningful to compare Shadows to entries like Origins, Odyssey, and Mirage, games released in more typical cycles, it says. And if you look at whoa. You're talking about games released in more typical cycles, but you also touted Skull and Bones as the very first quadruple A game, and that was a massive flop. This isn't an Assassin's Creed problem. I mean, don't get me wrong, the game is from everything I've seen and whatnot, not good. It is the very definition of it's a game. It's mid at best. It's mid at best. It's mired with controversy. A lot of that controversy completely justified. So yeah, that being said, this is the game. Like, it is the bare minimum, or at least the mediocre metric of what makes a video game a video game. But then why did Skull and Bones flop? Skull and Bones flop because, again, you have a massive budget for what you call the very first quadruple A game that nobody wanted, that nobody asked for. They got delayed multiple times that people just didn't care about, but they've also lost their faith in you, Ubisoft. They lost their faith in the brand, in the company that made it, and this isn't a new thing. Ubisoft been crashing out. Star Wars Outlaws, the Avatar game, game. I mean, we've gone on and on about it. So really, no, Assassin's Creed, it didn't have to have really probably any of that controversy that was attached to it. It may have sold a little bit better, but we still would probably be seeing a categoric failure because Ubisoft just doesn't know how to allocate funds and doesn't know how to have small, tight-knit production teams that can, put these projects out in a timely fashion. They can put these projects out in an operable fashion. I mean, God, I've seen video after all the glitches, and I've seen people try and cope with, well, of course, it's a day one game. It's gonna have glitches. Bitches shouldn't. Man, you go buy a game for the PS1, the GameCube, whatever, when that shit was on a disc, they need to have a working game out the gate. Why? Because there was no day one updates, there were no patches, that wasn't really an option back then. So no, because you guys have continued buying these games on day one, you've allowed this, this mentality to fester amongst the game devs that they're gonna buy this shit anyway, we'll patch it out later, which has led to shoddier development, which has led to, honestly, lackluster developers probably getting, more accolades than they should because they're doing the bare minimum because, hey, whatever, we'll fix it in post. I mean, it's a problem we've seen in Hollywood, the fix it in post mentality that's now crept over into video games. So the fact of the matter is, yeah, this is 100%, this isn't even just a Ubisoft problem. This is a game industry-wide problem. While companies are always going to spin their latest thing into a Mondo success, yes, you're right, companies will always spin their latest thing as a Mondo success. So why did you open this article with Assassin's Creed Shadows is doing very well, incredibly well? You wouldn't believe how well it's doing if it's just, the company's spinning it as a Mondo success. This seems pretty fair to me. It's undeniable the video game industry as a whole got absolutely zooted, just tremendously high on the hog from all the cash that poured in when we were all locked indoors over 2020 and 2021. Guys, it's 2025 now. In fact, we're a ways into 2025. We're almost 4 months. We're almost a quarter of the year into 2025. This shit was 4 years ago. And in fact, some of the areas where I live, like the Midwest, good old red states that don't give a fuck, they are, we barely had lockdowns at all. So, no, you can't just default to some shit that happened 4 years ago and still try and use that as the excuse anymore. It's a bit of a statistical outlier, not necessarily something to look to when you're trying to figure out actual long-term trends. Yeah, I don't really know anyone that was comparing Valhalla anyway, since Valhalla, for example, wasn't even released day and date on Steam. It didn't come out till much later. Ubisoft also in this article goes on to talk about how going forward they're going to do their releases on Steam because they saw such great numbers on Steam. I don't know how they can look at these numbers and think that's great, but it's only great if you're not looking at the statistical outliers. The outliers being most games released day and date, and your Assassin's Creed ones don't. They're stuck on Epic Game Store or your Ubisoft platform, whatever it is, and it comes to Steam later. Basically, bro, Ubisoft coping. Like, there's no other... When you tell IGN, when there's an email to IGN that says, don't use this comparison, it's because Ubisoft is coping, because any sort of negative press, even if they're trying to spin it positively, like this homo-ass PC Gamer article did, even if they're trying to spin it positively, gamers are going to read between the lines and be like, yo, I don't think that's how that works. Like, the math just ain't mathin', and that's exactly what's happening here. Like, PC Gamer is running Ultimate Defense. Now, why is PC Gamer running Ultimate Defense? Let's be real, let's call it what it is, because they hate gamers. They do. They don't like, your straight white males. They don't like the Republicans. They don't like the conservatives. They don't like Elon Musk fans. I mean, PC Gamer wrote multiple articles in, over the span of a week, trashing Elon Musk. What does that have to do with PC gaming? Not really a goddamn thing, but they did anyway because they're ideologically captured. At least call a spade a spade. Like, you're gonna run defense for Assassin's Creed Shadows because you're upsetting spaghetti at all those right-wing gamer chuds out there that were bitching about this game for the last couple of years. Maybe if Ubisoft had just made a good fucking game, it would have, and frankly had a history of making good games and not flop after flop after flop like they've seen for the last several years, because Ubisoft has been dying for the last several years now. I mean, just take a look at the stock trends, take a look at the sales history of their previous games. You want to prove this game a success, you want to actually make that case, give us some sales numbers. But you ain't going to do that because we all know it's not a success. But you're still going to continue to cap for it, run defense, and most importantly, you're going to continue to lie, blatantly lie, or at the very least try and obfuscate very obvious truths because it fits your ideological agenda. But those are just my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments down below, or let me know on X, where you can find me at Bolt the Word. And please do subscribe. I'm a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news nearly every day. Not always about the video game industry, but anime, movies, music, Magic the Gathering, you name it. Check me out on Instagram at wordsofparadise_Leon and become a member for $4.99 a month. You can join the Discord, choose the articles we go over on a day-to-day basis, choose the videos we react to on the potential Sunday live streams, and of course, get involved There were 180 other vital idols. We are a bright, beautiful, glowing, vibrant community that I cannot wait to grow even further because we do care about diversity. Only one kind of diversity. Diversity of thought. If that's interesting to you, join the Discord, hit subscribe, and until next time, it's all here in the Nerdosphere. This has been Words of Paradise.